Hey everybody, Gisele Grenier here from artplace.ca. In today's video lesson, I want to create kind of like a motivational wall art piece, which isn't really for a wall, it's tiny. I was doing a lot of gratitude journaling, and I'm finding that, well, from when I first started, I have a lot of trouble expressing myself with creative words. So as I'm starting to look up words and stuff like that, it's becoming easier and easier and easier. And with having finished the desire map with Danielle Laporte, I found, boy, I really need to expand my vocabulary. And from that thought, I was inspired to create this piece. So again, it's small, more as a prototype. That way, if I want to make it into a larger piece, I'll have the basics down pat. It's just a way of saving money. Not creating something large and it doesn't quite work out because I have so many projects where I teach and I do YouTube videos, and I have my membership site where I do the classes and all this stuff. I try to save time wherever I can, and this is one of the ways. On the table, I've got a book of backgrounds piece. This is the second half of it where I've cut up, and I'm going to be using this side here. The paints I'm going to be using: DecoArt Media Fluid Acrylics, Transparent Red Iron Oxide, Phthalo Blue, Titanium White. I'm going to be using the Matte Medium as well, and then some DecoArt Metallic Luster. This is a wax finish, Iced Espresso. I've got a couple of brushes, a synthetic flat and a little Bristol stencil brush. I've got my paints already on the palette paper. And the stencil I'm going to be using is this one here. It's the Americana Decor stencil. I love how thick these are. They're really sturdy. The stencil is named Live. Vivant Vive. And I'm trying to think. Oh yeah, duh. And it comes, there's this side here, dance like there's no one's watching, and then these ones here. I drew a blank. I drew a blank. So I'm going to use Love Beyond Words. And I was gifted this by my friend Lynn. And I'm going to take it apart. That way it becomes transparent. I was gifted some stuff from Kathleen. She actually took them apart for me. Thank you. But yeah, so these, I mean, this stuff is so beautiful. And I have a funny feeling there is another layer on here. Yeah, there is. So when I'm going to take it apart. Oh, maybe I got it. Oh, I got it. Let's take it apart off camera. So this is a good quality napkin. Oh, thank you, Lynn. There we go. So nice and, see, it's pretty semi-transparent. So I'm thinking I want to get the words in here where I don't want them to really make any sense. This is actually quite nice just like this. So I want it, so it'll be semi-transparent. Because the napkin is off-white, it'll neutralize a lot of the color, but some of it will still show through. So I'm liking this piece right here. Just a little bit of the flower. Again, this is just going to be in the background. I was either going to do that or right in the middle and do something like that. But I think, because I love the postage stamp. So if I were to do it like this, get less of the flower there, and then put this right here. And then I'm going to stencil this probably, oh, and then I'm going to color this and then stencil that white, and I'll edge with Iced Espresso. I think that's probably what I'm going to end up doing. So that's what I'm going for. I'm going to stencil it collage it right there. I don't want to waste any of this stencil. I keep calling it a stencil. This napkin. I don't want to waste any of it. And I want to thank you guys for sending me all this stuff from all over the world. It's so cool. And a lot of it's, you know, the challenges. People are sending me stuff to say, I want to see what you can make with this. The pieces are getting a little bit harder to do. You know, I'm a landscape and portrait artist. This mixed media stuff is just for fun, but it is challenging. So I'm going to be using the matte medium this way. I'm just going to put that on there. And I'm thinking I'm not going to mind if I can get this thing to crinkle. The other thing I could use is the DecoArt, the decoupage for napkins, because it's much thinner. This will be fine though. And I'm going to put the matte medium. That's a habit I have, putting everything on here that I have to put my hand over. That's a nasty habit that I have. So be very careful when collaging napkins, especially at this stage here, because they may rip. And if they do rip, so what? So what? Unless you're doing a commission for somebody or a birthday gift and this is the only napkin you have, then okay, well. And see, as it gets wet, it becomes a little bit more translucent very slowly. And I have to admit, I can never do these. I don't have the patience for the collaging stuff. I do it so fast and then it ends up failing. So that's okay. Helps develop patience. The dried bits of the matte medium on there. I opened up a new jar and I have a funny feeling the jar that's on here is the old jar because this is awfully dirty. So I'm going to let this dry right like this. I'm not even going to take it up or to trim it now. I'm going to wait for it to dry. Making sure I go right to the very edge. And I'm pushing very gently, pushing the matte medium into the tissue. That way it soaks right through. The other thing you can do too is wet it and then put the medium on top. See, that color showed right through. Alrighty. I'm going to clean my brush and we'll come back in about 15 minutes when this is dry. Look how beautiful that is. Isn't that gorgeous? And on top of putting the matte medium on the piece when I was sealing it, after I trimmed it, I also took my finger and I put some matte medium. I just went like this on the edge to further create a seal around that edge. So this is beautiful. So now I want to do that stenciling. Now I have to mist my paints because they were drying out. One of the things I want to remind you guys that when you're using better quality paints, that if you look on the back of the label, there's on top of the color index number, there's properties in there. For this particular piece here, I'm doing everything with transparent paints except for the titanium white. Even though it's a fluid paint, it is opaque. So when you're looking at doing stuff, if you want to make sure that the light goes through the piece so you can see underlying layers, or you want optical color mixing, make sure you look for paints that are transparent. And cheap craft paints sometimes are not usually transparent because they're so full of fillers and they add white to make them look stronger. So just be aware of that when you want to create those layers. And Joe took my masking tape, so hopefully my head not getting in the way. And I'm going to dip into, and the fluid paints, I don't like stenciling with this stuff because it is so fluid. But even being fluid, even though it's opaque, it is going to be more transparent the way I'm going to put it on. I'm contemplating, I probably should have used gesso, but we'll see. Because I do want this to be a little bit more transparent. I just don't want it running underneath the stencil. There we go. They'll be fine. Opaque is when you're applying the full layer. I'm going to be pouncing it. Normally I'll do a swirl. I'm going to be pouncing it so I can see, make sure I can still see everything through it. With acrylics, because they dry darker, you have to keep that in mind. With the white though, it dries lighter than white, darker than white. It's not white when it's used transparently. The words to be there, but just the hint. I'm going to lift it up very carefully to see if it's what I want. Not even close. I'm going to have to add more. I may end up having to use my gesso if I don't move the stencil. Okay, so note to self, when I want to stencil, I'm going to use the Traditions or just gesso. There we go. So we'll see when that, I can see a little bit. We'll see what that looks like. Oh, I forgot my brush bucket. Oopsie. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean this up and I'm going to let that dry. Then when we come back, I'm going to finish off the edges and just add a little bit of metallic to it. So it's all dry now, and what I'm going to do now is darken up the edges a bit, and then we're going to apply the metallic luster to the edge. So I'm going to take some transparent red iron oxide and a little bit of phthalo blue. both transparent colors. Paper towel. That's the paper towel I use for the stencil, so I want to make sure I don't get any of that. I'm going to take the dirty brush with the transparent red oxide. That's a little too dark. Just want to darken it just a speck. That's better. And just darkening the edge. Nothing major. And this is why when using the matte medium, why it's handy when doing this, because it creates that nice layer. It's going to knock back some of that white, because the white's stark. It's really intense. See all the paint I have left over. I don't have to do everything. Oh, I can just do the bottom letters. Bottom of the letters. Big difference. Big difference. Oops, too much. I think I forgot to blot it. There we go. That's neat. There we go. The last step. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the bristle brush to get it started. And this I have to turn to the light because it's very, very subtle. I don't want to put too much on there. And you don't have to do this. Is something I like to do. I like to finish the edges of my pieces. Work from the outside and work in. Now it'll create a bit of a gradation. Just be careful how much you put on there. If I would have done this without darkening it first, it wouldn't be as noticeable because the paper was already dark. This is why putting that seal on the edge, that matte medium seal, helps a lot. And that's it. It's finished. Now from here, because of this particular product, the wax metallic, what I like to do is, usually I use a soft cloth, but I'll use a paper towel, dry, and I'll just rub the edges, which buffs it, and then it becomes permanent. So this becomes a little bit stronger. See? Wax on, wax off. Is that how it goes? I love that. And then just the edge gently, and it's finished. There we go. How's that? I love that. So my question to you is, if I gave this to you and you had to give it to somebody else, who would that person be? Okay, so if I gave this to you and you had to give it to somebody else, just comment below with the name of that person, just the first name of who that person is, and just share. Okay. I think if I was given this and I had to give it to somebody, I think I'd send this to Danielle Laporte. Because she's such a beautiful person, and she speaks so beautifully and is just so full of love, and her words, I mean, she's just poetic. And I think I would send this to her. All right, so there's a surprise in the description below. So read that, answer the question, and now I'm going to clean up and go get ready for my next project. So until I see you then, stay inspired.